What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today's podcast is entitled The Daily Grind, and as usual, I will begin this podcast off with the quote: "Circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself." And that's a quote by Epictetus. Today is Memorial Day, and I'm not really big on holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day. I'm not really big on holidays just for a number of different reasons. But Memorial Day is a holiday that I feel stands out amongst the rest, and there's a lot of lessons that we can learn by observing the true meaning of Memorial Day, not just like grilling and cooking out and having a day off from work, but the true real meaning behind what Memorial Day stands for. There's a lot to be said for the people that have given the ultimate sacrifice for the ideals that they so strongly believed. Oftentimes, when it all boils down to it, they were fighting for the person next to them. I know that when I was in the Marines and when I was in the Army, we had a lot of conversations about like when we go down range or if we're deployed, just trying to get in the mindset and just get ourselves ready to be in that space so that we knew what we were fighting for and what we were there for. And a lot of times, often all the time, it wasn't about politics, it wasn't about religion, it wasn't about this, it wasn't about that. At the end of the day, when you're in those type of situations, you're fighting to get home. You're fighting so that the person to the left or to the right of you has the ability to see their family again, or just because you care, because you form a brotherhood, a bond that's so strong that it supersedes a lot of superficial things that we have in society that are just existent because we don't have the process that we have in the military where that environment forges friendships through adversity, through success, achieving a common goal. It's just an environment that really fosters relationships that are just uncanny, that we don't see reflected in society a lot, except amongst other veterans and for obvious reasons. But usually when you're downrange, and people who have gone downrange or who have deployed have come back and told me, that when you're over there and the bullets start flying and explosives are going off and stuff like that, you're not worried about politics. You're not worried about the left or the right. You're worried about getting home. You're worried about your family, and you're worried about the guy next to you, your battle buddy. There's long history of people of many different races, ethnicities, nationalities, and/or religions who have sacrificed their lives for a bigger picture, for what they deemed was a worthy cause. There are people that have gone overseas that have died for a host of reasons. I can't just say it's one specific reason. Because there's a ton of different reasons. Like while I was in the military and I spoke to different people, just trying to see what was their reason for enlisting. What was their reasoning for being willing to sacrifice their life. It was different. There was no consistent answer. There many people had the same answer, but there weren't really a consistent answer that really resonated through everybody. Everybody had a different answer in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So there's a lesson in that as well, that we have to find a cause that's worthy. We have to identify something that is worth us paying the ultimate price for. Instead of just living life and being afraid of death and being afraid of the inevitable, we need to be upfront and face to face with it and ready to embrace it if need be for a just cause, whatever that cause may be. And I'm not here to tell you, it should be this or it should be that, but whatever that cause may be to you, whatever is worthy in your mind, then live your life accordingly. So I say all that to say this. It everything I've said basically brings us back to the quote that I used to open up the podcast. Circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him. So when you're downrange, when you're, facing some adversity in life, it might not even be being deployed, or something that's worth risk, that's gonna end up in you inevitably losing your life. If it's just something difficult, something you're afraid of, some type of hardship, you could pretend to be big bad, you could pretend to have your stuff together, you could pretend to be Mr. Macho, you could pretend all these things, but in the midst of adversity, in the midst of, these different circumstances that we're gonna face, it's gonna expose you. It's gonna show the real you. It's gonna show, you know, the person that is you behind all the makeup and the facades, and when the cameras aren't on you, and it's just gonna expose you. So we need to be living our lives as authentically as possible, so that when these trials come up, when these circumstances come up, it's nothing new for us. It's business as usual. It's this is me. I am who I am, and I'm gonna handle this situation just as I would any other situation, just as I would any other adversity. Because at the end of the day, trials and hardships, like we've talked about, are just the flip sides of the coin. You can't have good without the bad. You can't have bad without the good. So if you're living life and you know this fact, you're cognizant and aware of this fact, that you can't have one without the other, then when one happens or the other happens, you're not surprised, or you're not thrown off, because it's not that you're expecting it, but you're aware of it. You know that it can happen. You know that it will happen. It's a part of life. So it doesn't really throw you off center. It doesn't really throw you off balance. It's just an aspect of life. And again, our perspective is what makes it good or bad. So again, it's all about knowledge. Knowledge is power, and application is the true strength in that. I'm a big believer in the fact that we do not rise to the level of our expectations, but we sink to the level of our training. That's something that I've told, students that I've instructed. It's something that I've had a conversation with coworkers about. It's something that I've stated in training. It's we just don't. Like when you get into a fight, you watch TV, you watch these movies and stuff like that, and you see these people, you know, getting in a stressful situation, and rising to some level that just seems, impressive, or, just awesome, to be blunt. And you feel, or you have that illusion, because of how the movie hypes you up, and kind of gets you excited and riled up, that, if you got into a fight, you'd handle it the same way. But having been in fights, it's not like that at all. And when it comes down to it, it's gonna be your training and your application of that training that is gonna determine how the fight ends, or what's the end result of that fight. Because fear is a very real and a very strong emotion. And if you let your emotions take over in certain situations, then the outcome is not going to be good. So one of the important things about training, especially for stressful situations, is that you want to have emotional intelligence. You want to know what emotion is coming up. You want to know what's the source of that emotion, and how to adequately deal with that emotion, so that the emotion doesn't prohibit you from exercising the proper application of the training that you've had to deal with that moment, if you do train. If you don't train, on the flip side of that coin, when you face those adversities, when you face those trials, you're now going to be behind the eight ball, because that moment in that time is not the time to get the training. I mean, you will receive a training from life in the form of a very hard lesson that you could have learned a very different way. But right then, at that moment in time, when you're facing that trial, when you're facing that adversity, is not the moment in time that you need to have wished that you were training. And this is why training is so important. We need to be training every day in every way. And when I talk about training, I'm not just saying like physically, because I feel, at least in the experience that I've had with certain people in certain career fields, and in certain applications, that people feel that they need to train their body But what I really feel gets neglected is the mind, because the mind is what's going to get you through. When your muscles start failing, when the emotions set in, when you start feeling overwhelmed, when you start feeling tired, your mind is what's going to pull you through. Your mind is going to tell you, hey, we're not done until I say we're done. Or, hey, like, if we don't dig ourselves out of this one, man, this might be it. Our mind is what's going to be what pushes us. Because even if our body still has more to go, if your mind isn't in the fight, then your body isn't going to be willing, and you're just going to surrender and give up. And you don't want to do that. It's never acceptable to surrender. Take a break if you need to, but it's never acceptable to surrender. And this is why I preach so much, mind, body, and spirit. That's the trifecta. Like, if your mind, body, and spirit is in alignment, you're a very dangerous person. You're a very powerful person, because you have the knowledge, the power, and then you'll be able to properly apply it because you understand it on many different levels. Training can have a physical aspect, but it also has a mental aspect and a spiritual component as well. And if you don't appreciate the different levels of training that are necessary for us to thrive and to exist in this life, it's you're doing yourself an injustice. You really are, because you could be the strongest man in the world, but as soon as you get punched in the face, all of a sudden reality is going to set in. Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face. And that's very real. I thought I was big, bad, and tough guy until I got into my first fight. And then it humbled me. And I trained from that point forward, physically, mentally. And with that physical and mental training came the emotional component as well, and the spiritual component as well. And I got all of that through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then the next time I had a fight that I was basically by myself and had to, do what I had to do, it went totally different, because I was in a different space. I was in a different mindset. I was thinking a totally different way, analyzing the situation a totally different way. It was just a totally different outcome. And it forever taught me the value of training. Not just training your mind and your body, but also your spirit. Just having, that peace and calm that, you're here to do what you have to do, and you're fine with the outcome, whichever way it goes. But you're going to do everything in your power to survive, to thrive, to make it through, to succeed, and get on the other side of this trial, this hardship. The battlefield is the mind. Everything else, whether we perceive it as good or bad, is a product of our thought process. This is why circumstances reveal your true character. You can only fake so much. Again, it's about perception. The battlefield is the mind. Perception is reality. So our thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions, which lead to results, the results that we get in life. And our thoughts, through our perception, create these titles, or they give titles to certain situations, circumstances, occurrences, whether they're positive or negative. And again, through our thought process, we can change that. We can flip it around. It could be something that we perceive as negative, but what's the lesson that you're gonna learn? What can I get from this situation? How could I come out the other side better than I went into the situation? Just like with the fighting analogy that I gave a little bit earlier. Yeah, I got in that fight. Yeah, I lost it. But what did I learn from it? I learned that I wasn't ready. I learned that a fight is a whole lot different than what you see on TV, you see in the movie. Things go a lot quicker. You get tired a lot faster, especially if you're out of shape. So I prepared myself accordingly. And at the end of the day, I walked away out alive. I took a L, but it didn't result in the loss of my life. So, technically it's a W, and then I learned from it, and I became a better person for it. And again, it's something that I will hold with me for the rest of my life. But it was a hard lesson to learn. I'm not gonna play it down or say that it wasn't. And that's just like life, We can go through life and we can perceive the way that we grew up is bad. We can perceive that we didn't have any opportunities. We can perceive, the whole woe is me mentality. But we still got to go through life. We still got to exist. We still got to persist despite everything that may or may not have happened. And while we do that, we could take everything that has happened that we or anybody else would view as negative, and we could flip that to view it as positive. We could say, hey, I didn't grow up with this, or hey, I didn't grow up with that, or nobody supported me, or I had to get it this way instead of an easier way. And I mean, all of that stuff can work for you. Like there are countless players in the NFL, NBA, track stars, movie stars, rock stars, plenty of people who didn't have nothing that were determined to make something of themselves, make something of their lives because they thought that they deserved better and they knew that they deserved better. Belief is very powerful. And if you don't believe in yourself, that's where you're fundamentally messed up. Because if nobody else believes in you, you have to believe in yourself. And then once you have that belief, then you can execute on the knowledge that you obtain through study and hard work and the lessons that life are going to inevitably teach you. Consistency, persistence, and discipline, amongst the host of other qualities, are all parts of our daily lives that we should give attention to. I listed consistency, persistence, and discipline specifically because those are three categories of characteristics that I feel go into everything. In school, if you're consistent in how you study, if you're persistent, then no matter how hard the coursework is, that you're going to get a good grade. And if you're disciplined enough to do your homework, to talk to the teacher, to study extra, then you're going to get a good grade. If you're consistently going to the gym, if you're persistent in lifting weight, no matter how much it hurts or how much you feel like you can't do it, and you stay disciplined to the process, then you're going to achieve the body image that you want to achieve. If you're consistent with your diet, if you're persistent that you're going to stick to your diet despite all the cravings, and you have the discipline to not listen to any of the voices in your head that are telling you to cheat or have cheat meals, then again, you're going to achieve the body image that you want to. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Consistency, persistence, and discipline. If you just work on those three things daily, and like I always say in my podcast, I'm working on them as well, and I'm seeing the effects. Like I've been counting calories, I've been upping my protein intake, I've been doing more cardio, I've been doing different types of workout, changing things up instead of just being stationary, switching my routine from just lifting weights to a form of functional fitness, not CrossFit, but a form of functional fitness mixed in with lifting weights and stuff like that. And I'm starting to see the results of consistency, persistence, and discipline. So I'm executing all this stuff that we're talking about in the podcast and my life. And again, I'm trying to relate to the things that we're talking about, but you can only fake it for so long. So, why not grind while things are easier, while things are going the way you want them to go, so that when things go the way you don't want them to go, okay, it's not the norm, but you're ready for it. It's not anything that's going to shock your system. Let's be like those who have given the ultimate sacrifice and live life on our terms. You only got one life to live. You only got one life to live. There's no redos. There's no rewinds. There's no fast forwards. You only got one life to live. And there's people who are counting on you, who are depending on you, that you might not even know, that you may never know. And depending on how you live your life, on a small scale or on a big scale, you have the opportunity to influence somebody on some level, whether small or large, on some level, to where they could create a positive change, or you could start a domino effect of positive change in this world that can affect your community and maybe able to expand into, a national realm, or even, have a world effect. And you could be somebody famous that, is documented throughout history for creating a change, like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, all of these people who dared to be different, who had noteworthy causes, and dedicated their lives to the achievement of these goals. Like, we can do that. We have that potential in us as well. Maybe to not to that magnitude, but you have the ability to be great in your world, in your sphere. And that sphere might coincide with the world at large. Like, you never know. You never know what your potential is. But if you're living your life according to somebody else's plan, or just unintentionally on a daily basis, then you're never going to find out what greatness you have locked up in you. The graveyard is one of the richest places in the world, not because of oil or gold or diamonds, but because of all the opportunities that weren't realized because people were afraid to be themselves, to be authentic, to live intentionally. So why be scared? You only got one life to live. Let's live it intentionally.